Last night, I saw the live-action remake of Ghost in the Shell, and in short, I was thoroughly disappointed. I'm not here to explain that, however, because I decided today to watch the original Ghost in the Shell to see why everyone thought the live-action paled in comparison. This review was difficult for me because a lot of Ghost in the Shell is very outdated 20 years later. I've read reviews from 2002, only 7 years after the movie first came out, that claim Ghost in the Shell is the most beautiful movie they've seen and that the animation is lifelike. For me, watching this film 22 years later, it's difficult to see the same merit in the animation and other aspects of the movie. Due to this, I'm just going to talk about the film. There's no rating at the end because I don't feel I can appropriately give one. Part of what irritated me about the live-action version of Ghost in the Shell was the fact that there was no subtlety to the discussion of AI or consciousness and related themes. This is something that reviews of the live-action version said the original did a lot better. While the depth of discussion in the anime is far deeper than the live action, and overall the introduction of different ideas is much subtler, I don't find its discussion that much more engaging than the live action one. To me, the exploration of AI and consciousness in this film is very primitive, and it's something that I've seen done in more relevant and nuanced ways more recently in films like Spike Jonze's Her. Discussion over the rights of AI and even the existence of AI were in their infancy when Ghost in the Shell was made in 1995. The cultural impact of AI's possibility was very different in the 90s, and you can see that in fears of Y2K and other general misunderstandings of the power of computers. Despite this, there are some very interesting ideas in Ghost in the Shell that were brought up but not fully explored, and it was these less focused on ideas that made me more engaged with the anime than the live action. The very first scene includes a discussion over the idea of consciousness or sentience being a bug or an accident in AI, and even this is leagues beyond anything discussed in the live action film. However, this and many other interesting ideas that the anime brings up aren't explored any further. The idea of accidentally creating sentience in a robot would be an incredible premise for a film, and would create an interesting connection between the Puppet Master, the film's villain, and Major, the main character. In addition to this, having one specific focus for the film's exploration of artificial intelligence and what makes human beings human would make it much more cohesive. As it stands, for a lot of the film I felt like I was missing something, like there was something that happened early on that I missed. Although, as I said, the cultural significance of AI in 1995 was different, and perhaps that's the reason Ghost in the Shell's discussion feels so disjointed to me. I want to preface my discussion of characters in this film by saying that I feel like the characters have a very specific purpose that serves the theme. There are moments towards the end that felt like they had significance, but their significance to the viewer relied on their understanding of the theme and the film's discussion of it. It's also possible that these moments weren't intended that way at all, and I was inferring this from parallels in the live-action version. Voice acting was good across the board, but as far as the quality of what they were saying goes, I'm not as sure. I'm not going to say it's good or bad, because it is translated from Japanese, so there is a possibility that the translation ended up being much heavier-handed than the original dialogue. However, I still think it's worth mentioning that there are some overt and thus kind of boring monologues by some characters. There are aspects to the monologues that have merit, but this links back to the introduction of ideas that are never brought up again. I want to go back to the comment in the review from 2002, I'll quote, "This is the most beautiful film I have ever seen. There, I've said it. Watch it and be awed at how amazingly detailed and fluid the whole film is. Never does it falter in the art department. The colors are just right, the people's movements are so real it's scary, and sometimes the strong story of the film can't fit all this beauty in, and so it releases it entirely in a magical scene in the middle of the film with no dialogue and no plot progression, just marvelous panoramic shot followed by marvelous panoramic shot." Before I discuss how I feel about this comment, I want to say that my pick for worst argument in defense of a film is, it's old, so obviously it's not going to be as good. My response is usually 2001: A Space Odyssey and Taxi Driver, but the reason I think the argument is faulty, fundamentally, is because filmmakers can use special effects available to them to enhance the movie without relying on it, and thus making it very outdated in the future. 2001 is a brilliant example of that. Unfortunately, animation can't really do this. The technology that animation relies on can't be mixed with real life to make it more realistic. It must be created from scratch. Ghost in the Shell's animation is admirable for 1995, and it probably was incredible when it was first released, so I don't blame this reviewer for saying that it's the most beautiful film that he or she has seen. Overall though, I think the design of the world is very bland, it just looks like any old city. There are specific shots that make use of a city and they look cool, but overall, like I said, it's not all that vibrant. Although this is another area where parallels with the live action film could have made my expectations a little bit too over the top. The most outdated aspect of the animation is the faces. They severely lack subtlety, and while people are talking, the only part of the frame that moves is their mouths, which is very difficult to relate to, and it makes it difficult to decipher character emotions. Were the voice acting not as strong as it was, this could be a real drag, but since the voice acting is good, it's not that bad. Again, it's 1995, and just like computer animations of faces have improved vastly since then, so has hand-drawn animation. Another technical issue I have with Ghost of Michelle is its soundscape or lack thereof. It happens to a lot of animated movies or CGI sequences that the audio just seems very empty, regardless of how much is happening on screen. In the opening scene of Ghost of Michelle, what looks like hundreds of police storm a building and the only thing you can hear is footsteps. When you're expecting to hear the rustling of clothes, the clicking of guns, and all these other things, it's kind of distracting that all you can hear is footsteps. I can't say if this is because of the technology available at the time, or if it's because of a lack of thought for what sounds would be able to be heard, so I'm not going to dwell on this issue, but I will say that it is distracting. It might be due to a lack of ability to layer audio tracks over each other. The reason I say this is because whenever music is introduced, I don't remember there being other sound playing. The music itself, fortunately, doesn't face the same problem with less advanced technology. As such, it's good stuff. The choir in the main theme is fittingly haunting and simultaneously wondrous, however its usage is stretched very thin. There wasn't a lot of music played in Ghost of Michelle, and there weren't very many tracks used either, which was disappointing given how much I liked the music that was in the film. Given that I'm not rating Ghost of Michelle, would I recommend it? It really depends. As a film, I don't think I would. If you watched the live action one and thought it was interesting, I think I would recommend it. If you want to see an example of old animation that is decent enough to be entertaining, then I would also recommend it. But as I said, it sort of depends on what you're looking to get out of this film. Okay, I'm just doing a very quick off-the-cuff ad to what I was just talking about. So I watched a couple of videos about specifically the animation of the world in Ghost of Michelle, and I think because I did watch the live-action version, which is so overt in its depiction of this new Japanese city, that it kind of tarnished what my expectations were for the city in the animated version. I think the animated is a lot more subtle, and when I'm talking about those specific shots that make use of a city, I'm talking about them in a way that they infer, or help the audience infer what's going on in the city, like that there's a bunch of ads, it's really bright all the time, that kind of thing, so it makes it feel kind of futuristic, and I think that specific issue won't be as prevalent for you if you haven't watched the live action one as recently as I did. The other thing I wanted to say is about the Mage's character, in relation to what she brings to the theme of like AI and things like that. So mainly I wanted to say that her there are sequences in the film, like the one that everyone raves about in the middle, well, the one that's in that quote where they're talking about the panoramic shots and stuff, where she's sort of, the things that they animate her doing and looking at make really good points about how she feels about being a cyborg, which is really cool, and that kind of thing is really well done. I think I forgot to mention that through the review, and I wanted to say that's a really entertaining part of the movie, is watching her character react to different things, where in the live action one, every single time she reacted to something, it was spelled out for you, like instantly. Like, she looks at a robot in a live action one, and she's kind of like puzzling over it, and then someone runs over to her and goes, "You're not like that," and I was like, I mean, you don't really need to say that. So I think it's that sort of thing is done a lot better in the animated version, and it's one of the most engaging parts of the film, and I just wanted to say that as a little positive note on the end. Thanks.